All right, so you guys, of course, are wondering where the shift in technology is going. And of course, this is the show that's going to talk to you about it as we see really kind of a new landscape starting to appear in the restaurant industry, and it's all being driven by technology. I've got with me today an expert that's going to dive into this. This is Paul Barron, and it's the Barron Report. All right, so Michael Atkinson, the founder and CEO of RestTech and Bailiwick Ventures. Great to have you on the show, Michael.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Good to have you.
So, Michael, let's get in. You're calling in from Dallas today, so love the fact that you're in my home state there, Texas. Let's kind of get into the landscape of tech as you see it. You've been in the industry for quite some time. You've seen a lot of the ebbs and flows of the industry. So I think our listeners and viewers would really appreciate your thoughts on kind of where you see some of the big shifts currently occurring right now in food service.
Yeah, a lot of the new technology has been around for a long time. It's just now there's a reason. Technology, from my perspective, being very active in restaurant technology, is the new center of the plate. I mean, without technology, I think you're going to be challenged going into the future. So there's a lot of new and exciting things, but there's a lot of proven technologies that have been sitting on the sidelines that are now, seemingly very, very important.
Yeah, for sure. Contactless has been kind of thrust into the front, forcing. I remember when Curbside was, a big thing 20 years ago, and it was kind of abandoned by most concepts. There's a lot of technology that's been around for quite some time. Even if you look at the drive-through technology with some order confirmation and the pull and park model that I even think McDonald's is starting to implement a few of those. Let's kind of jump into a couple of these. One is contactless. Okay, so there's a ton of companies that have started to really, I guess, just really make the fact known that they're moving briskly into the contactless payment area. Where do you see contactless payment landing? Do you feel like this is something that's going to land in the POS system? Or do you feel like this is going to be maybe a second party company that's integrating, much like what we've seen in the delivery space?
Yeah, I think both fronts. A lot of the new innovation, the most recent innovation, are the contactless menu technologies that enable you to either access a beacon or even touch a simple QR code. And it brings up either a static or dynamic menu. And if it's the dynamic menu, which means that it's engaged for commerce, then you can order from your table, you can pay at the table, you can add to your order at the table. It's fully functional, and there's companies like Zuppler, for example, that recently released their menu anywhere touchless, and contactless. Platform, which is remarkable because it really means that it's not just contactless; it's just menu anywhere. So your iPhone or your cell phone is now your personal device that can open up the gates to any menu and track your performance, and also use that as a digital wallet.
So obviously we with COVID-19, we've seen the pressure of this requirement. I'm just kind of curious, why do you feel like this was so slow to get ingrained into the restaurant industry? It seems like a natural evolution towards convenience. Why do you think it was such a slow take-up?
I ask that question all the time about all technologies, because from my seat, restaurants should embrace the horror of technology years ago. You travel, I travel. I mean, the contactless, pay at the table has been around in Europe and Asia for years and years.
Yeah.
The restaurant industry is slow to adopt. They always have been. I think that's changing, though. I think they're really embracing technology as it needs to be embraced, and particularly in a COVID environment. But what they're doing now is very simple and elegant, enabling customers to be able to be more in control. And frankly, traveling on an airplane, I don't want to touch a magazine ever again in the backseat of an airline, which makes touching a menu even more difficult and less interesting. So if there's a way that I can have access to a menu and pay at the table, that's better for me as a consumer. I can manage my own time, but it's much, much better for the restaurant operator as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I obviously this is kind of moving the ball for a lot of operators. It's a necessity now. It's kind of like one of the thresholds of survival in terms of running your business. Let's move on to curbside, because this has been an area that we've seen everything from fine dining and obviously casual, which is usually where curbside lived in the past, but now fast casual, even though they're using shared parking lots. What are your thoughts on curbside? Do you feel like this is going to be a habit that Americans or even worldwide citizens continue to hold on to post-COVID-19?
Yeah, I think curbside is really interesting. I mean, there's always been pickup. Now, curbside is the new pickup, right?
Right.
But it's still about 50% of all off-premise that's delivery. So, out of the percentages of takeaway, about half is still pickup, and the other half is delivery. And you can call pickup curbside. I think that'll absolutely increase as operators wrestle with the challenges of third parties, the expense of third parties. Curbside is just easier. I audit my own human behavior, and I found myself going to pick up meals during COVID instead of having them delivered for a couple of reasons. One is security and safety. The other one is just not that hard. And now with prepay, they ask, what's the make of your car, what's the color of your car, and you pull up.
Right.
And sometimes there's a parking lot with little numbers, and you text them the space you're in, and they bring it out. It's evolving and changing very quickly, and I think the consumers are adopting.
Yeah, I think that is it's a big factor. I've talked to several people in the case of usually families who maybe have small children, and curbside is a natural fit for them, which is why they would in most cases use delivery, because they didn't want to drag a kid inside to Outback or somewhere like that to go pick up your food, and definitely don't want to leave them in the car. So it kind of blends the world of convenience and starts to eliminate some of the scenarios that you talked about with delivery. Let's get into, so for thumbs up on curbside, do you think this is here to stay, and we're probably going to see more of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to where you see the progress going in terms of virtual brands and ghost kitchens. So virtual brands, you kind of know how that is. We've seen several concepts that have started to spin up alternate brand models within their four walls, and then even ghost kitchens that are completely supplanted operations. Where do you think that's going to head in the next few years?
It's going to be a monster. This has been coming for a long time. And again, the restaurant industry is very, tended to be slow to adapt and adopt, and doesn't really like change. And this pandemic has really forced everyone to really think out of the box and get aggressive.
Yeah.
Ghost kitchens, dark kitchens, there's primarily 6 different models, and they're all being used. But the mere fact that restaurant operators are utilizing their kitchen, it's like, flex manufacturing now. If they have a kitchen and they have one category of food, they have unused capacity in the kitchen, they have unused capacity in labor. So why not create virtual brands in those kitchens?
Right.
The concept of going out and finding a location and building a restaurant with one category of food, I think those days are going to be numbered, other than upscale casual, maybe fine dining. But the concept of one kitchen, multiple brands in a dark kitchen, that you can build brands virtually on the fly and gain the insight and feedback from the customers to give you feedback on whether you should have poke or you should have Indian food, gives the operator much more control of their destiny. So I think dark restaurants are just about to explode.
Interesting. So, Michael, I've had both CEOs saying dark kitchens are definitely on the rise, and then other CEOs saying, it's a fad. That's kind of where it stands. And I haven't seen one indication one way or the other. And when you mentioned the different models that are out there, obviously you've got the Kitchen Uniteds of the world, which are, putting together brand crews, I guess, where you've got variety of offerings, versus the standalone dark kitchen where it's maybe one operator that's running 3 or 4 different concepts out of it. What other kind of concepts are you seeing start to percolate out of that area?
Well, there's some in Europe and the Middle East that use a kind of a hybrid model, where they basically buy wholesale food from restaurants and they finish it with their own branding.
Okay.
So that's where I could order a chicken sandwich and I really don't know where it's coming from. Even Chuck E. Cheese flirted with that type of concept. They had an existing kitchen, they created a new brand, but it was a different quality product. The most interesting new model I've seen is a company that's about ready to launch out of the Bay Area called Ghoster. And Ghoster is utilizing a flex manufacturing model where they partner with existing restaurants that have unused capacity that may not have the tech savvy or the desire to run multiple brands out of a single kitchen. So they bring in a complete operating system. They bring in a tech stack, virtual brands, recipes, methods of operations, demand generation, delivery partners. It's a dark restaurant kitchen in a box, if you will.
So more really SaaS oriented.
It's multiple categories. So they're launching with steak frites, tacos, pizza, Mexican, Italian concept, but they have probably 15 different concepts in their queue with very limited menus, very focused on like 5 or 6 different items per concept for throughput and focus. They're expecting to have 3 pilots up by the end of the fourth quarter. But I'm anxious to see that because that's really kind of a hybrid of all the other 6 models, because it really is a partnership between the restaurant and the dark kitchen operating system.
Mm-hmm. So I've seen, we've seen mobile kitchens start to evolve. We've seen, the kind of the rise and fall of the robotic elements of that. If you look at dark kitchens and virtual brands going forward, if you were to place bets on winners, do you feel that a Kitchen United cloud kitchen style that goes real estate play, or do you feel like we'll see a lot of concepts starting to go into flex and secondary space and just begin to blow up that market? What are your thoughts on the 2 areas in terms of real estate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's room for both models, but to your point, Kitchen United, Zool, and among others, they're really real estate plays. It's a different business model, and it's great for some operators to be able to test markets, or entrepreneurs who don't have the capital to be able to create a full-on restaurant or a food truck even. But I think the winning models that are more cash flow oriented and less capital intensive are the latter concepts, where they utilize flex space, unused capacity of both the restaurant and the employees. I think that gives the restaurant the ability to have ancillary sources of revenue instead of relying upon just one category of food at one location.
Yeah, right. I've seen one here not too far from us here in South Florida. They took an existing concept, which became their plant, and spun off multiple brands within it, virtual brands, and then even did market boxes, which were really almost like customized grocery kits that were coming to your house. So I was really surprised at the number of diversification ideas that came out of one little restaurant concept in going in that direction. So I think you're right. It's going to be an interesting model to keep an eye on for sure. All right, so let's move into third party. And this is kind of I have a love-hate with third party. And it's been one that it's been one that I just have to say I can't believe that restaurants ever let this actually happen, to the point, because the margins are so small. What are your thoughts on third party? Do they make it out of this thing alive, or are they going to have to go to a logistics style operation?
That's a question I wish I had an answer for. I have ideas and opinions, but like anything else, I think there's going to be a period of consolidation. I mean, there's a lot of rumors about what's going on with Grubhub, and I think if there was odds on this, it makes most strategic sense for Deliveroo to buy Grubhub, because they've been wanting to come to the U.S. market for a long time.
Yeah, that's
Grubhub
right.
gives them the foothold. I mean, it's a natural. Plus, backed by Amazon money, it's Amazon getting back into the third-party business. But I think there's a couple issues here. One is Curbside. I think it's going to grow, which means that delivery is going to shrink a little bit. Or if it doesn't shrink, I think more operators are going to be self-directing their own delivery. And I think that's driven in part by ways to differentiate yourself, because think about what takeout is, or delivery. It's food coming to you in a bag. What if you upscaled that a little bit and differentiated your offering? What if you had a roll-up in there? What if you had placemats? What if you took a different perspective about what delivery is and called it in-home dining, and just elevated it a little bit? And I think that's gonna help. And when you have that bag that's elevated, smart operators are going to put little messages inside those bags that say, well, next time, please order direct and save 10% or something. So I think they're finding a way to get around the demand generation fees and the delivery fees. Part of it's going to be, directing people to the platforms, directly to the restaurant. Part of it's their own delivery folks.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen some concepts that have kind of gone in that direction, kind of taken pages out of the home meal kits that come to your house. I mean, they use that basically as a marketing box more, as well as a food delivery box. And I've seen restaurants start to move in that direction, so I could definitely understand that. So looking at third party, because this, the fact that they have this technology and this marketplace intact, if you just considered or a pivot for those companies like a Uber or even a Grubhub that just eliminated the driver and went strictly to a SaaS logistics product that a restaurant could essentially monthly payment, I'm writing a check to Uber to use the logistics system inside Uber, and I've got my own drivers, or I've got drivers that I'm working with, but they're delivering my food in my way. Do you feel like that could be an alternative for a company like Uber to go in that direction?
I didn't think it could be. I mean, Uber loses unless things have changed. My sources tell me they lose money on every delivery. They make money on demand generation. So, I mean, look at Grubhub. They didn't have delivery until just a few years ago. They had a demand generation engine. That's when they were making the most money. Delivery is a tough business. It's fractional. There are certain companies that figure out the algorithms and the logistics to be able to make that work. Very few have. So I think there's some sort of a hybrid model there. I think you're right, Paul, where in a partnership model instead of a vendor model, where the operators can a la carte these types of services from the aggregators. I think that makes a lot of sense. It would be interesting to see it tested.
Yeah, well, I mean, SoftBank's got a lot of money in Uber. When you think about where and what they're trying to do, I think long term, I think eventually they're going to have to come to realization that this company, if they're going to use Uber Eats as a growth engine, they're going to have to change the model for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about kiosks. We're doing a rundown here, so I want to talk about kiosks because this has been an area that some operators spent a ton of dollars in the past decade, both table side and also entry-level kiosks for order taking and et cetera. Your thoughts on that now that sanitation is a real big issue with people coming up using the same things? It's kind of an issue now. So where does this go in terms of kiosk technology?
Well, that's close to home. I'm an investor in a couple of different voice technology companies. One is Orderscape, the other one is Starbar. And Orderscape is actually working on developing a touchless, voice-enabled kiosk ordering solution for a chain of restaurants in the UK. It eliminates touching at all. I mean,
sure.
Again, touching magazines, touching menus. I don't want to touch a kiosk any more than anyone else. And it's so much easier just to say, place my order and I'll have a cheeseburger, fries, and a chocolate shake than just a hunt and peck. So I think voice is going to have a real play in kiosks. I think there's a huge future for kiosks in all QSR and fast casual restaurants. I think that makes sense strategically. But I think using the visual elements, facial recognition for payments, I think that's a good idea. But I think voice is going to be a major player in kiosks as they unfold.
Yeah, voice has been one that is kind of been up and down. I had it on my 2018 or 19 technologies to watch, especially with what Amazon and Apple were both doing in that race to get to voice recognition and voice commands. So I think if it does implement into the food service space or any service space where you have to do these, I could see this in car rental, I could see this in hotel, all sorts of independent check-in points down the road. moving forward. Do you think that Amazon, Apple, do you think they have a chance to maybe enter the space of more of these retail environments, or do you think they're going to stay on the consumer side?
Another good question. I think they really want to power the technology. They are the platforms, and they're a distribution engine. And they tend to leave it up to the entrepreneurs to be able to develop the technology. So think of voice or Amazon for Alexa as just an iPhone. You still have to develop the app to go on the iPhone to give it some function and application. So I don't see Amazon or Google or Bixby, and I still don't see Siri for quite some time because they still haven't opened up their API yet, being a major player. But I see several companies out there here in the US, the UK, and the Middle East, as well as parts of Europe, that have really advanced conversational commerce to a point where full menu ordering just makes sense. At the very least, voice search is at least 50%. It's closer to, I think, 60% of all search now. So unless you can be found or discoverable on these devices, it's like the old Yellow Pages. Unless you had an ad in the Yellow Pages, you can't be found. And I think moving forward, restaurants need to do whatever they can to expose their menus to as many channels as they can, and voice is a good channel.
For sure. You mentioned a little bit about facial recognition in terms of payment. I had a CEO on the show here just a little bit ago talking about temperature scans, full body temperature scans and IDs with cameras. So instead of the situation where you know, if you're a restaurant and you want to make sure people are entering in with, the right temperature and they're not coming in sick, do you feel like a technology like that will make it, or do you think there's going to be a barrier to entry due to privacy concerns? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a slippery slope. It's a challenge. I think from a technical standpoint, it makes sense. From a security and safety perspective, I think it makes sense. But I think consumer adoption is going to be really tough, especially here in the U.S. I think we are very mindful of our rights, and I think everyone has to opt in first. And what does that mean? And am I going to get notified? And what are they going to do with my picture? I think that's going to be a challenge. I think it makes sense, but I think it's going to be very, very slow to adopt.
For sure. It'd be interesting. I mean, his rebuttal to me, because I was kind of in the same camp of I just don't see this as a personal privacy, or I do see this as a personal privacy issue. I don't see it happening. And his was that, after 9/11, the adoption of the TSA and airport screenings really ramped up, and that people it became a thing. And I still don't balance that with a place. I mean, if I'm going to an airport, I have no choice. I've got to use the airport to fly. Man, if I'm going to a restaurant, I'm going to go to one that isn't using that kind of tech, So I feel like that might be a differentiator in terms of how you select a restaurant in the future.
It is. I agree. I mean, just look at now. I mean, I'm in Texas where they were among the first to open, and wearing masks in restaurants. Everyone seems to be, at least the restaurants that I've seen, seems to be playing by the rules. But the longer this goes, the fewer people wear masks, and people are creatures of habit. If they have a choice to be scanned and their temperature taken and have a lot of rules before they even enter the door, I think that's going to be a friction.
That's a deterrent.
Yeah, it is
a deterrent for sure.
Yeah.
I saw in the great state of Texas and my own hometown, Austin, where they were talking about actually taking your name down and your phone number when you enter a restaurant now for the potential of tracing in case there's an outbreak. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they're doing it in California. I mean, part of my team is in California, and they're very, very strict there, where you had to actually sign in and put your telephone number and for contact tracing. I think that's from where we are now with COVID. I mean, we're far from having this pandemic be over. So I'm for safety and security, and good judgment more than anything else. And I think if people have good judgment, then hopefully that will prevail. I just have a sense that contact tracing, unless everybody subscribes and
exactly
is involved, then it's destined to fail.
Yeah, for sure. That was going to be an interesting one. One last question for you here, Michael, and that is talking about the point of sale industry. You know, we've seen a massive move, obviously, with contactless payment, but also the issue of really changing the dynamic of POS integrations, because now you've got delivery, you've got curbside issues, you've got on-demand ordering issues and then on-location ordering issues, all being virtual or via mobile devices. Do you see point-of-sale companies adapting quickly to these massive influx of technology requests in terms of getting their business to it, or do you see a scenario where we're just going to see a new crop of point-of-sale companies develop like we did a few years ago?
Well, my philosophy on point of sale is that it needs to be hardware agnostic, it needs to be cloud-based, it needs to have an open API that anything can plug into. So I see these new, technologies being more point products that need to adapt and integrate into the point of sale. If I was to own a point of sale company, I would focus on the core and leverage outside entrepreneurs to let them be the experts at these different tools and utilities that restaurants need now. So they will, because there's two schools. There's a restaurant in a box concept where they have a lot of different light modules in their core being a transactional point of sale.
Right. Hardware.
Others that are more focused on having an open architecture and focus on just delivering these things and letting other entrepreneurs find the point products. I see them racing, but I see entrepreneurs in a hyper innovation period, being able to the ones that actually come out with these connectors.
Yeah. Last question, I promise. I got you, so I want to get as much out of you as I can. If you look at fast casual, they were kind of poised for this in terms of their tech stack was, for the most part, fast casual was in a good position to deal with this, though they did see some downturns, but just not near as much in casual. Do you think casual dining gets a revival here because technology could implement some whole new opportunity layers for them? Do you feel like that could happen in casual dining?
Well, I would sure like to say yes. I think casual dining is really in trouble, and I think you knew the answer to that. So, if you're well positioned for what the future is, I mean, look, before COVID, off-premise sales accounted for 63% of total sales. So we were already heading towards that anyway. With COVID, it just pushed everybody to 100%. So the delta between 63 and 100% is somewhere we're going to end up. The restaurant segments that are best positioned to be able to adapt from a technology standpoint as well as a consumer standpoint are the ones that will survive. And I just think casual has been hurting for some time, and I think they will continue to hurt.
Interesting words coming from a veteran technologist in the industry, Michael Atkinson. Great to have you on the show today.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So all of you're listening in, maybe over on Spotify or on iTunes, make sure and drop us a rating. That's how we get some great feedback from you. And the other idea is we're getting ready, if you don't know, we're launching a variety of virtual events. We've got several coming up that are going to be very interesting to watch how the industry responds to this new phase of how we're doing virtual events here on Foodable Network, which is quite a bit different. It's not your daddy's Zoom call, that's for sure. So make sure and check out foodable.io for a lot of information on upcoming events. We have several coming up through the summer. You don't want to miss those. And of course, if you have a great idea for a show, or maybe an expert like Michael to bring on the show, send us an email to producer@foodabletv.com, or you can always hit me up on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time on The Barron Report.